We then have the main guest of tonight, Boris. Welcome. We don't need a QR code for this guy, right? So, right. So let us start with, because I want to do this properly. Oh, and there you go. That's already the first fuck up of tonight. There you go. This is Boris. Would you recognize him?
No.
So it's funny because I think a week ago or so, he posted this on Instagram and he got a lot of comments actually.
I did, yeah, because a few people said, "Are you sure this is you and not your sister? Because you look like a girl."
Yeah.
Yeah, which was funny, of course. I do see it. Yeah, it looks kind of girly. I don't know what it is. I used to be fat and blonde. So I'm no longer fat and blonde. So actually, a few years ago, I had a friend of mine. We organized a poker evening at my house. And we told everybody, so I had like, I think 8 people in total, all like girls and guys, it was 50-50. And I said, you all have to come dressed as something else. And that's all I said, but everybody understood cross-dress. It was not my intention at all. But the friend I organized it with, he said to me, let's cross-dress, it will be fun. And I'm like, oh, sure, yeah, that sounds like
Sure, why not?
So, but then he confessed to me that he said, well, actually, I have to tell you something. I grew up having a mother and a father, but in the summer, I just had 2 mothers.
Oh.
So his father was like a professional, almost full-time cross-dresser. So
Yeah.
every evening when he came home, he dressed into a dress. And the whole summer, he would live his life as a woman. So my friend knew all the tricks of turning me into a woman.
A real expert.
An expert, which was like a great experience. And so I shaved my legs, of course, and we went out to buy high heels, which is very difficult to find high heels in my size. And it was all fun and games until he put on the wig and applied the makeup. Because up until then, it was still Boris in a dress. But then he started putting on the makeup, and I looked in the mirror, and I'm like, I just look like a really ugly version of my sister. So, is this what you wanted to discuss?
Yeah. So this is basically, that's why I wanted to have this chat with Boris, because great stories. Right, so that's part of your personal intro. But let's take, because what I've seen, I've obviously read a lot about you, read a lot that you've written. But I also, who is Boris? So let's start off with that, right? Who is Boris? Do you have kids? Do you know? Yes.
I do, yeah. I have a girlfriend and 2 children, our children together. They're 15 and 18, and I'm the founder and CEO of The Next Web, TNW. And I also have a story about that. So I have the sweater, of course. I also have a shirt underneath. It also says TNW. And when I got 2 girls' daughters, I thought, well, the one thing I don't have to worry about is them stealing my clothing. But that's a misconception. They steal all my clothing, including my underwear. But seriously. And so a week ago, my daughter in the morning, she was wearing a sweater like this, my sweater. And then I said, hey, nice sweater, cool that you're doing promotion. And she said, I also have the t-shirt underneath. And then I said, do you mind doing advertising for TNW? And she said, no, not really, but sometimes I worry that people don't understand what it means. And then I said to her, well, you can make up something yourself, right? So just imagine it meaning something else. And then she said, well, what? I said, well, you come up with it. And my daughter is 15 and like a shy 15-year-old girl. So she looked at her shirt and she said, the naked woman? And I said, well, maybe not that. But I don't know what you came up with.
Okay, it's interesting because I met one of your colleagues, Anthony Balcerek, I'm not sure if I pronounced that correctly, which is on the startup side of The Next Web. Yeah. And I saw just the middle bit of his shirt because he had a little blouse on. Oh, yeah, exactly. But I recognized it and I said, hey, you're The Next Web. So arguably, there's good brand recognition. Good branding, yeah. Right, so that's the intro. That's you.
That's me.
That's you. Is it you? Yeah, yeah. He's here. He was skiing actually in France. And he didn't know about the 6 British people that were nearby that actually caught coronavirus. Yeah, so if after tonight you're sick, we know who to blame, right? Just so you... Right, sorry, bad joke. I'm a father as well, so I make bad jokes. Right. My first question would be, obviously you've recently launched Growth Quarters with the Next Web, which is very much stories from founders. And as you say on the opening article, you don't want to give advice, you want to tell stories so that people learn through hearing the stories. Yeah. So can you take us through one story that obviously you founded the Next Web in 2006 with your co-founder, and can you take us to one story that was really your lowest low in your entrepreneurial life, and what did you do to really come out of it, and what did you apply?
Yeah, I think in the beginning, when we were organizing the first conference, there was a moment, it was the first conference we ever organized, we didn't really know how to organize a conference, so we were sort of just making it up as we went along. And there was a moment where we realized it was just not gonna work. So we hadn't sold enough tickets, and we realized also from talking to other people, like we were missing one key speaker. And then there was a moment where we had to think, like, are we gonna take our loss and just cancel the whole thing, or go all in and spend a lot of money in getting one big name? Yeah. And I remember that we were standing somewhere like on a bridge and the sun was shining. You can see the bridge from here because we had the office in the old 11 building next to the library. And we're standing on the bridge and we were going like, well, a sensible thing would be to cut our loss and sort of save what we have. But that's also sort of boring. And there was a moment where we just said like, all right, screw it. Let's just spend all the money we have and put in our own money and just book this one expensive speaker and go down in flames if we have to, but then at least we gave it everything we had. So that was sort of a combination of a low moment because we were realizing like, oh my God, we're so in over our heads. Yeah. It's really not working. It's so much harder than we thought. And then we decided to just risk it all, which sounds very brave afterwards. But the moment you're doing it, it's just like, oh my God, how am I going to ever explain this to anyone that we're taking such a huge risk? Yeah.
Okay, wow. Low is low, so that's, yeah. And then just based,
to be fair, I think there have been, like, I think every month we had, and we've had several, where at the beginning of the month we weren't sure how we were going to pay our employees at the end of the month. And I think there have been about 10 times where we were in such a situation in 10 years, where we would just, I just didn't know if I would still have a company at the end of the month. And I think that's a very, like, not a subject that a lot of people talk about. Yeah. But I think every entrepreneur recognizes that, like, the risks you take are always there. Definitely.
Cool. Yeah. So yeah, definitely the fuck ups, they're not talked about enough, I think, and it's a lot of hard work, right? And
yeah. I think there was a book, and I forget which book it was, but there was a book written about Google founders. And one highlight of the book was that one of the founders said, from the outside, Google looks like, two geniuses at Stanford, and they invent something, and then it's just like this. It's like, yeah. And he said,
arguably, you at that same point now, right?
Totally, all uphill. And then he told a story. He said there were 60 moments in the first 10 years of Google, and some of those moments were after the IPO, where they had the same experience, where they weren't sure if they would still have a company the next day. And this is Google, right? The success story, one of the biggest companies in the world. And that gave me a lot of comfort as an entrepreneur, because from the outside, everything always looks good and simple, right? Yeah. Everybody you ask, how are you doing, says, oh, I'm doing great, even when you really want to cry inside. And I think for entrepreneurs, it's even worse, because you're sort of building up a dream, you're blowing up everything and making it look more successful, because you know that if something looks successful, then people want to be a part of it. So you're always making things look better, and then it's sort of not very natural to say, well, actually, it's awful. You don't say that. So Unless it's about a long time ago. Then, I can
then it's okay,
file.
yeah. And then you get crazy guys like me asking you these questions. Yeah. Right. So then moving on to obviously what you say, Google now being a big success story, but in my opinion, the next web, and in a lot of people's opinion, the next web is a similar sort of big success story, arguably not as global as Google, but you're getting there.
Yeah, just
as global, but
big,
not as big, but you're getting there. Yeah. But obviously, well, part of it has now been bought up by Financial Times, which is also a big, obviously a big success, I can imagine. That was, so that brings me to kind of the next topic, because I'd like to start off negative, right? But then obviously coming to the positive, which can also turn into a very negative thing, which is managing real, like high-speed growth, right? We're at Growth Tribe tonight, growth hacking, connecting all of the dots. So is there a similar sort of story whereby I think from 2015 to now, you've grown like crazy with the next web, with the event. During that time, was there a situation whereby you had a hard time managing this high-speed growth?
Of course, there are moments of success where we were proud and happy, but it's always overshadowed by stuff that you worry about. So, and to give you one example, like if we have a conference, so we're going to have 20,000 attendees this year, and then last year we had 15,000. And if I talk to a competitor that says like, oh, we only have 2,000 and you're so successful because you have 15,000.
Yeah.
Of course, you know that if we say we had 15,000, we were probably aiming for 20. Right?
Yeah.
So of course we say, hey, 15,000. Internally, we're like, shit.
Yeah.
15,000.
The goals.
We wanted so much more.
Yeah.
And if we say we're now going to go for 20, of course I'm hoping for more, right? So I think every success. Even with the Financial Times deal, when we announced it, people say, oh, that's so great, so now you can relax. And I'm like, no, are you kidding? No, I just have new shareholders. And they're even more professional than the previous shareholders, and the stakes are high, and we're just getting started. And you know, we celebrated for 2 hours, and then back to work. So.
a few beers, right? At least.
Champagne.
Champagne, okay. Well, at least there was champagne. That's good. So actually, not on the question is, but then that brings me to, obviously Financial Times is investing a lot in sifted.eu. I don't know if you know, people in the room know sifted.eu, but it's a startup news site basically. And they've recently launched a community as well. Are there any kind of, like, would they be considered a competitor at some point? Or do you think, like, how do you complement each other as part of the Financial Times group?
So I sold 2 companies before we did the deal with FT. And the first thing the FT said is, we want to buy a majority, but then we want you to stick around.
Okay.
And then I said, that's very unrealistic, right? Because I've sold 2 companies, and both times I said, yes, I'll stick around. Both times I was gone within a year.
Okay.
And every founder I know who sells his company to a bigger company, they all say, yeah, I'm going to stick around, best friends, work together forever, gone within a year. Like, nobody sticks around.
No.
And then the Financial Times said, we know this, we are aware of this, but we still want you to stick around. But we have learned that if we give a lot of power to the entrepreneur and keep them as independent as possible, so as powerful and independent as possible, then they do tend to stick around.
Yeah.
This is the research we've done. That's what we've seen in our own companies as well. So the deal we made is that they own a majority, but within that deal, me and Patrick, my co-founder, still have a lot of autonomy. Yeah. So we have a board meeting every quarter, but within our plan, we have all the freedom to do what we want. So they can't tell us, hey, can you change this little thing? We're just, no, it's our company. They own a majority, but their power is very limited. And that also means that they don't tell us to work with Sifted or to work with FT or anything. They basically said, we are a very powerful and nice to have shareholder. You can ask us anything, but we're not going to tell you anything. It's your company, it's your strategy and vision, do whatever you want. So it's now been a year, I'm still here.
You're still here, okay, that's good. You're not gone yet, that's good. Well, so that from bringing us from the Financial Times and bringing us to managing high-speed growth, I love the fact that you sit on the couch with your co-founder, because I've been to 2 meetings now with separate people, and you always sit there, I think in the afternoon, and people can just come up to you and
Yeah.
and that's something really nice. Have you found at some point that was also quite demanding of you, whereby all the employees could come, or was this always been a...
So it's, I haven't had a desk or an office in 10 years, I think.
Okay.
So my workplace is usually a couch or a comfortable chair or a beanbag or
Or a hammock. Yeah.
Yeah. And usually when people come up to me, I'm also very honest, right? So somebody comes up to me and says, hey, do you have 5 minutes? Then I say, well, I'm in the middle of something. I'm really focused on it. So are you sure it's going to be 5 minutes? Can you also put it in an email? And I think people sort of understand that if I look focused on the thing I'm doing, that they don't disturb me. But then on the other hand, a large part of my job is talking to the people in my company. So I always... So yesterday I had a meeting with a developer in my company, and I repeated to him. I said, because he was complaining that there were too many requests from other parts of the company, and then I said, well, if you have a good manager, and my job within the company is to be the shit umbrella for you, right? So I'm the shit umbrella. I stop all the shit so you can focus on your work. Yeah. And I say that to every new employee. I'm like, my job is just to make you all free enough and empowered enough to do the actual job, right? So, of course, if you're a manager, and this is all the theory, right? I don't do everything that well myself, but the theory is that as a manager, you hire people who are better at their job than you could ever be. Yeah. So what is your job then? Well, shit, umbrella, empower them, make sure they can do the work that they have to do. So I guess there are moments when I have to work and can't be disturbed. Of course. But then I'll hide somewhere. So usually when I'm on the couch.
Then you're okay, then.
Yeah, then I'm still doing stuff, but a lot of my work is just message here, a message there, reacting to stuff. So yeah.
Cool. All right. So that interestingly brings me to the actual thing that I did write down, because he's like, this guy, he wrote me some questions, but now he's asking different things.
If any of you have questions, just put up your hand and you can ask it as well.
So I did say no Q&A, but then that's flexible, right? So if there's like a brand there, you go.
Yeah. Yes.
Who was the speaker that you put all your best on?
That was Kevin Kelly. Do you know Kevin Kelly? He's a co-founder of Wired magazine, and he wrote a couple of books that are very visionary.
Right.
One of the smartest guys I know. He's short and he has a white beard, so he looks like a magician. I don't know, but a great visionary. I can highly recommend checking out his book.
And he showed up.
Kelly. He showed up.
Yeah. That was good.
Yeah. The funny thing was that I think me and Patrick, we've always been good in making ourselves look bigger than we are. And that's nice at times, because then people are like, So one time I had a meeting with Reed Hastings, the CEO, founder of Netflix. I was introduced to him by someone else, and they said, this is Boris, the CEO of T&W. And then Reed Hastings said, oh, T&W, there's a very big company in the US called T&W. Are you affiliated to that? Just like, no, that's my company, right? Yeah, and he just couldn't imagine that it was just like a guy from the Netherlands. This thing that he knew that was big. But so back to Kevin Kelly. So I think we made the conference seem like a big thing, and so he negotiated hard for a good price to get him over. And then we had the speaker dinner. We couldn't afford to go to a restaurant because we had spent all our money on him and the show. So Patrick and I decided, let's just cook ourselves in my house. So all the speakers showed up to my house and slowly started to realize, like, this is not a big company. This is just Boris and Patrick, and they're making dinner for us, right? And after dinner, they had to go back to the venue to put all the chairs in place, right? So it's suddenly, like, I could see the click in all the speakers that we had. And so at one point I was doing the dishes, and then Kevin Kelly came into the kitchen and he started drying the dishes, and we had a conversation. And there's a photo of that, and it was like an awesome moment. Like, I read his books. For me, he's a sort of a, well, I look up to the guy, right?
Yeah.
So, and then suddenly you're doing the dishes together, and that was an awesome moment. But it's also, I still try to do these things, right? So I try to, because I realized then, and I think this is a growth trick, is that people they want to be a part of success, but they actually love when things are personal.
Yeah.
And so for 10 years we did every speaker dinner in my house, even when we had like 40 speakers, right? And Patrick and I would cook. Like even if it was super stressful the night before the conference, we would still do it. Like walk away from everything, say, sorry, we got to go because we got to go.
Personal
to
touch.
Speakers.
Yeah.
And because we realized like that, making that connection on that like very basic level, just feeding someone, like that creates a sort of a bond that you can't buy or create otherwise.
Definitely.
I still cook for speakers. So last year we had 160 speakers.
Wow.
And so there's not in my house, but there's a hotel, Zoku.
Okay.
And so at one point I met the founder of Zoku, and he used to have a restaurant. So and I like to cook as well. So we were talking about cooking, and then he said, "Why don't you come cook in my hotel with my chef?" So he is like a professional chef there who used to cook at a Michelin star restaurant.
And you're better than the chef, right?
I'm definitely not. So that's the funny part. But it was the highlight of one of the highlights in my life, really, because I was suddenly in like a professional kitchen, standing next to a professional chef with the owner, making dinner with the three of us. And we did this a month before the actual dinner for 160 people. So just the three of us. And I was standing there feeling like a complete amateur, right? So you feel like there are 100 rules here that I'm breaking. I'm not even aware of them. But a great experience.
Wow. And you're going to do that again this year then?
Yeah. So I try to do it every year.
Okay.
So I try to do these things that some people think are difficult to scale.
Yeah.
So one example is, so every year I always say I want to shake everybody's hand. Like everybody at the conference, I want to shake their hand.
Wow.
And we had 15,000 people. So then you're like, well, that's how I got to work. Right?
You need a few extra hands, right?
Yeah. But then I noticed something. So I learned something at some point. So if there's a group of, let's say, 5 people, and I walk into the middle of this group of 5 people, shake one of them, like their hands, and say, hey, how are you doing? And sort of smile at the rest. Then these 5 people will tell other people, I just met Boris.
Yeah.
And then they, like, if people ask, like, oh, did you actually talk? Well, I was standing next to someone. They will, but they feel like, no, but I met Boris. I was right there, right? So, and that scales. So suddenly I can give a lot of people hands. And then, of course, everybody who works at TNW, we say, whenever you see a group of people, walk to them and say, I want to shake your hand on behalf of TNW and Boris, the CEO. And then that sort of feels like, oh, well, indirectly I
shook his hand.
Yeah. And we have 100 people, 130 people in the company, but also 200 volunteers. We tell them all the same. So just everybody you see at the conference, go over, shake their hands, ask them if they're doing okay, offer them a drink, anything, just get like personal contact with people.
Yeah.
And that's why, of course, I can shake a 15,000 hands, but I can sort of scale this intimacy through the conference to give everybody the impression I was at a very personal event, and I almost got to shake Boris's hand, but I really had great contact with a lot of people.
I think there's one volunteer in the crowd actually. Alina, can you put up your hand? Alina? Alina? Where is she? She's gone.
She's too shy.
She was here the whole time, right? She just must have gone to the toilet. Alina Sosnina, right. But that's her colleague, and she's taking pictures. So that's really cool. Right, so that brings me, obviously, like you say, scaling things, right? That's a big thing. So from 0 to 1, and then from startup to scale up, and there's a lot of, and so there's this big push, obviously, with Tech Leap, and I think you cooperate with Tech Leap as well on some levels. And we're at Grow Tribe, which is one of the promising scale-ups of the Netherlands. So I see, like, in my opinion, or my long-term vision and whatever that's worth, I see a lot of growth happening here. And obviously you way more expertise than me on this topic, but how do you see TNW 5 years from now? And this is like the worst question anyone can ever ask in an HR.
So what I look at is the opportunity, basically. I feel like, so a short story, when I first, I dropped out of school when I was 15, then I went to circus school. After that to Art Academy, and when I was at the Art Academy, I started working with computers. Yeah. And I got excited, but I also felt like I was sort of late to the party, right? I felt like, oh, like the personal computer has already been invented. Imagine being there, like imagine being Steve Jobs' age and just seeing this revolution take place, right? So I felt like this is awesome, but I was kind of born slightly too late. Then in 1995 was the first time I went online. And I thought, oh shit, another revolution that I missed. So I felt late to the party because Yahoo was already there. But then I thought, all right, I'm late to this party, but I'm going to get in anyway.
Yeah.
And of course, looking back, I was very early to the party. But I still feel that 20 years from now, we're going to look back and say to each other, do you remember 2020? We thought we were there, but it was only the beginning. Right? That's really what I think. And so I feel it's like tremendously exciting to have a company that where I'm in a position to see this revolution take place, and then even like know the players personally, and maybe even have a small influence on it.
Yeah.
Right? That's just incredibly exciting, and very. So if you look at the Netherlands, one of the first conferences, we needed a payment system. And I had a friend who had a payment system, or he was about to launch a payment system. And then he said, do you want to be a tester, like a beta tester? And I said, am I the first? And he said, no, there are 2 other companies also beta testing. But they went bankrupt before they could use the product. And that company is Adyen. So TNW is the sort of the first
customer of,
or the third, depending on you. But basically,
they're still surviving.
Yeah, the oldest surviving customer of Adyen. And so we used their product on the first conference, and then always kept using their product. And for I think the first 6 years, they would always say, we would always give them like. Good visibility at the conference and invite them over because they were our friends, and they would always say, you're so kind to us and we're so small, but one day we're going to make it up to you, right? And then when they became really successful, they said, now we're going to make it up to you, and they became an important partner, and we still work together.
Yeah.
So of course I'm not going to take credit for their success, but it's so cool to have been there at the beginning, right?
Yeah.
And so I was at Twitter when they were in a room half this size, and they had 9 people, and 3 of those were interns. That's when I was at Twitter. So seeing all these things, and of course at 1,000 companies that went nowhere, right? But just being there at the start and seeing these things grow is incredibly exciting, and I think that's the opportunity, right? So I don't want to change a lot about TNW. I think our reporting is great, the event is great, the locations we have, it's all working. Yeah. It's just my only regret is that not more people know about it. Yeah. So I think we guesstimated at one point that about 30 or 40 million people know us, but the audience we have is more like 600 million people. That's the amount of people that should know us. Yeah. And of course, if they would all know us and 500 million would say, yeah, it's not for me. That's fine, right? But I want more people to know about us.
Brand awareness. More people that run up to colleagues of yours and say, hey, I recognize this.
I recognize the shirt.
Yeah,
that would be nice. And so I think that's also what FT liked in us. They said, like, all right, so, digital is not just a thing that's happening now. I think this is a thing that's going to change a lot more, positive and negative, and we're going to be there at the forefront. So,
definitely. Okay. Well, that brings me to the end of my questions and the topics of tonight. But if indeed, if you're still open to 1 or 2 questions from the crowd, feel free. Then we've got the gentleman there first.
Going back to being either too early to the party or too late to the party. I know there might be always someone that could ask this, but what do you think cryptocurrency is at the moment in terms of it being too early, too late, or just being something that's not going?
Yeah, I do have an opinion about that. And there's a, I forgot who said it, but there's one stockbroker, like a billionaire stockbroker, and he said as soon as your cab driver starts asking you for trading tips, get out of the market. And I said that as a reply because at one point somebody in design at the company came up to me. I was in a hammock, and he said, should I buy crypto? And then I said, I have a quote for you. So I think it depends, right? So I think I was actually thinking of buying some crypto now. And I wasn't thinking about buying it because I think it's gonna go up the next week. It might go down for the next 10 years, but I think in the long term, like in the, like the next 10, 20, 30 years, I think it's gonna be a big thing. So I think it depends on your horizon. Like if you, I don't have any stock tips for you, right? But I think the technology is incredibly interesting. So, and I think this is one of those things. Like I don't want to quote Steve Jobs too much, but like he said, like if you find something that you're interested in and you like and you feel like, well, I just want to know everything about it. Well, do that then, right? Because if you do that for 4 years and then your startup fails, at least you'll have done something that you enjoy. So yeah, if you enjoy it, go for it.
One second, because the gentleman there was first, and then, sorry, I just go, and then you, and then there was someone in the back there. Okay, right, so I've got you, and you, right.
You were talking before about kind of being the shit umbrella for your employees. Do you sometimes miss the part where you actually do the job?
Yeah.
And when do you think is a good time in your career and in your life to switch from doing the job to become
Yeah, it's a good question. I remember the times when I missed it. I no longer miss it because I now understand better what my new job is. So, but I remember very well that I had a meeting. It was just one particular meeting where we had the meeting and then everybody sort of got up excited and they walked out like back to work. And I was sitting there going like, I got nothing to do. And then of course I realized that's a good thing, right? That's a good thing. That means that you managed it well. But I also just felt frustrated and empty. And I remember at one point coming home and telling my girlfriend, I said like, it's so weird. If I look at my agenda and it just has meetings in it, I just feel awful. And then if it's empty, I feel like I can do some work. But actually, the meeting is my work, right? It's my tool. I think it took maybe more than 2 years, maybe 3 years for me to make that switch. So, and I totally understand the entrepreneurs or specialists who say like, I used to do a job and now I'm a manager, and management, right? But I actually enjoy it. I think right now is like having a good meeting is like a work of art, right? If you feel like, if you understand the emotions in the room and you can read the faces and you walk in and you know this is the thing I want, and then it starts off going that way and then you slowly veer it back, and then I love that.
Cool. Gentleman there first. Sorry, yeah, ladies first. Boris is way more gentleman than me.
So back when you and your co-founder started the Next Web, what was your motivation and reasoning for starting the company?
Yeah.
And then the second part of the question is, all these years later, is that vision still the same, or has it very much shifted along the way?
Yeah. So I think, very honestly, right, there was no plan. It was just, we thought we have a good network, we would like to use that, and a conference seemed like a fun idea. And to us it felt like if we break even and meet all these amazing people, that's good enough, right? We had no grand vision to build it into a worldwide company. And then we did the conference, and actually we thought we were only going to do one. We just thought like, well, it's a one-off project, sounds like fun. And at the conference I spoke to Oscar Knappers, a Dutch entrepreneur, and I said to him, this is kind of fun, maybe we should do it again next year. And then, and I remember this very well, and then he said, are you crazy? Nobody does just one conference. Every conference is an investment in the next conference. Of course you're going to do a conference next year. And I walked to Patrick and I said, apparently we're in the conference business now. So that's how not ambitious or strategic we were. We just did something that we really like to do. And then very naively, similarly, we started the blog. So we realized that setting up media partnerships was difficult. But if you organize a conference, you sort of have the buzz about the conference, and you have the conference, and then it dies, right? So, and then next year you got to build up this buzz. So then we thought, like maybe we should start a blog, and we'll just write every day. And I'm like, yeah, we don't have time to write every day. Well, how much would a writer be? Well, like 2,500 a month. Well, that's like 5 tickets. So if we get a rider, so 5 tickets times 12, how much is that? I don't remember.
60.
60. So if we get one rider to ride full time the whole year, do we think we can sell 60 extra tickets? Yeah, probably. All right, let's hire a rider. That was the business plan. That's as simple as it was. So.
Cool. Yeah.
Something actually that triggered me from the conclusion of the kind of the last general question. When you mentioned about the positive and kind of the good and the bad things to come, and as somebody that's truly had their hand on the pulse of technological innovation and change, I'm actually quite curious as to what you're feeling, or how would you foresee, and what would you actually conceptualize as a challenge or as a bad innovation or development in digital to come. So what are we're always very excited about the latest to come, but what are things that you foresee that we need to tackle or
Well, I think a lot. So I'm an optimist, first of all, right? So I'm optimistic about technology in general. But a good friend of mine is Andrew Keen, and they call him the Antichrist of Silicon Valley, because he's super negative about everything. And we're good friends. And at one point somebody said, how come you're good friends? Because you're so optimistic and he's so pessimistic. And then I said, so my parents live in Rotterdam, and they have a view of the Maas, the big river. And every now and then there's like a huge sea ship, and they always have a boat in front and a boat in the back. And the boat in front is just pulling ahead, just like, yeah, future. And the one in the back is going like, oh, slowly, right? So I'm the boat in the front, and Rukeen is the boat in the back. And together we find the balance. So I think technology definitely has downsides, right? If you look at Facebook and the whole influencing and in politics and what's happening around the world, this is all very bad. I don't think technology in itself is bad, but it can be abused. And that's something, as technology becomes more powerful, becomes more clear and a bigger risk. And so I always, like our riders, I say we look at technology like we look at our children, right? So we want the best for them, but we're also honest if something's wrong. And then but we don't look at it purely negative. We're not gonna say it's all shit, right? Because you would never say that about a kid. You would just say, ooh, you screwed up there. This is not good. We gotta fix this behavior. But we mean well. So.
Great. I think that concludes the Q&A, because we had about a half an hour planned. We're just over it, which is good, which is great. So can I have an applause for Boris? Thank you very much.